Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, colleagues. Welcome to the monthly LGMA COP28 webinars prepared and hosted by ICLE, Local Governments for Sustainability, as the focal point of the LGMA constituency to the UNFCCC. My name is Yunus Arıkan. We will just give a couple of minutes for all the colleagues to settle down, and then we will proceed. So just give us a couple of more seconds, and then we will proceed. So I think we could consider that those who are focused on this webinar has already arrived, and obviously the new ones can always come up, and those who need can leave. Um, at the outset, today is the first day of the Eid Mubarak for the Islamic world. So we'd like to convey our celebrations and congratulations for this important day of the year. And our agenda for today is that we will go through a traditional introduction. We're trying to make it as consolidated as possible, assuming that most of the colleagues are familiar, but we always know that there may be new colleagues joining us in such sessions. So it's always good to catch up or review. Then we will continue our updates, and while focusing on that, we will also go through the stock take. We'll spend some time on COP28. We will highlight an important effort from Deborah Roberts as a member of the LGMA community in her candidacy for IPCC chair position. And we will end up with our colleagues from biodiversity communities sharing their agendas in terms of the progress in the biodiversity negotiations. For those who are also familiar, but let's remember this session is recorded, and the same agenda is discussed at the 4 p.m. in order to enable our colleagues in the Western Hemisphere also join us and share their updates as well. But the presentation is more or less the same as much as possible. And after the webinars, you will receive the links to the webinars as well. So for those who are, again, new, LGMA stands for the Local Governments and Municipal Authorities Constituency. We are one of the first 3 constituencies since 1995. And we are actually the voice of subnationals, all sizes, cities, towns, regions, states, provinces, metropolitan governments. And we are influencing the UNFCCC negotiation agenda. We are contributing to the action agenda, set the action agenda. We collaborate with presidencies, and of course, we also interact with the members of parties to the UNFCCC, especially for those who support multi-level action. We have a track record since 1993 or 95, but obviously you can notice that our efforts particularly have accelerated on the way towards the Paris Agreement and afterwards, knowing that recognition of the multi-level action and all levels of government was milestone into 2015 Paris Agreement, which was not the case in the UNFCCC and Kyoto, and as well as introduction of the term multi-level in the Glasgow Climate Pact. These are our main progress, and of course, in between there's a lot of blood, sweat, and tears, but also a lot of fun and happiness that we celebrate our achievements along this journey. We can keep us informed about yourselves by connecting to our webinars, but we also have bulletins. We have an archive of all these efforts, and we also have a WhatsApp group. We have stood recently, based on our strategy towards this vision of multi-level action delivers, noting that both Paris and Glasgow now has embedded us fully in the process, we're trying to be more systematic and more focused in our efforts. Therefore, we have created already a number of working groups on adaptation, on finance, on loss and damage finance, and others may, of course, can come up later on. And we encourage our colleagues to be connecting to our colleagues who are leading these processes so that they can contribute in the discussions. On the way towards COP28, our basic vision was build on the achievements of COP27, especially on surge as a mechanism for a delivery mechanism of all our commitments. And we will touch upon this, especially with the outcome of UN Habitat Assembly. We will focus on stocktake process, and the stocktake is also now an important agenda. And we are now also focusing on our preparation throughout the year-round engagement, because we all know that the COP outcomes can only be meaningful if you are involved in the negotiations, in the forums or workshops in between, and therefore we have to be active there. And I'm very happy that we are getting more active on this space as well. The point that this slide shows is, of course, it's a race that is handed over every year from one presidency to the other, and these are also elected according to those regional affiliations. So we were in the African COP, now we're going to Asia Pacific. Every year, of course, in between during the June, it becomes a moment where the previous host presidency starts to phase down their teams or activities, and the incoming president starts to be much more visible and active. That has also been the case in the last 2 weeks. For example, we have seen our delegation's presidency team, which were fantastically supporting us even after COP27, especially in the UN Habitat Assembly. They are starting to embark on their new assignments. Their engagement possibilities are much less procedural. They're always with us, but the COP28 presidency team is increasing in number, visibility, interactions, and positions. For example, at this COP, at this UN conference in Bonn, the last 2 weeks, we had seen the COP president designate champions, all of them coming up fully in the sessions, interacting with so many events, which was I think it was one of the most active engagement in the past couple of years. So that at the beginning of this period, the presidency team is so visible and so strong. I think that is a demonstration of how they're leading this process. We're also happy. In the past, for the presidency, we have worked with Ambassador Ayman Amin and his team. Now we're working with Asif Nawaz Shah, and he's also making us to connect both to the presidency and to the champions agenda as well. We have a roadmap. Obviously, we have been following this. We have defined this agenda. These are the highlights that we have covered. And in fact, this June was one of the peak in terms of the number of agendas parallel, almost going in Nairobi, Bonn, and then Brussels, NetCop. And if we can have a look at this as a bird's eye view, we are following our agendas in three main, let's say, tracks. One, the UNFCCC or UN agenda. The second is the global or national one, which are not necessarily bounded by the UN procedures, and the ones that are led by our own constituency members. So in the UN space, obviously, we had two parallel events going on in the second UN Habitat Assembly. Was during 5th to 9th of June. This was the first week when the UN conference was also taking place in Bonn. Obviously, our delegation community is split. We had a strong delegation in Nairobi, and then especially in the second week, we have also increased our engagement in the UN conference. We will come to the Habitat Assembly shortly, as well as UN climate talks as well here. On the non-negotiated agendas, of course, one of the most important agenda was the summit on a new global financing pact. There were several side events by our city networks, LGMA partners. City of Paris hosted also an important event on the new global commission for urban finance. Obviously, how much these will feed into the official process, we'll see. But it definitely introduced a new momentum in this space, which is exactly what we were asking, because we were saying that we have to introduce new mechanisms in order to respond that multi-level and urbanization is the new normal. If we're saying that this is the new normal, we have to have new instruments, we have to have new elements. From LGMA side, daring cities is the traditional engagement opportunity of City of Bonn, ICLE, State of North Rhine-Westphalia, and German Development Cooperation Agency. Over the past, since 2009, there was numerous models where we were always using the Bonn talks as our hotspot or cookpad for such engagement with UNFCCC. During the COVID era, we have made it virtual. So this was the first time daring cities community was in person in the negotiations, and we had a full agenda inside and outside the NFCC. MedCop was also an important event because the last MedCop, the Mediterranean partners, especially Mediterranean territorial institutions, local and regional governments in the Mediterranean basin, have met in 2016. So 7 years later was a need definitely to bring this community once again, and especially with Moroccan leadership on both ambitious action and multi-level action. This was an impressive event. And Brussels Urban Summit, with a number of networks like Eurocities, Metropolis, of course, created a new momentum. Brussels and European Union has always been at the heart of our interactions. And this was a good sequence because many leaders have managed to follow these events one after another and making sure that our voices are heard. And we were on the table, at the table, we were influencing the negotiation. A brief summary of the UN Habitat Assembly. Let's remember it is every 4 years, and the first one was held 4 years ago. So it's relatively in the UN governance a new kid on the block or a new baby just stepping up in speed. And of course, once you are meeting every 4 year, outcomes and strategic discussions are becoming more important that guides your future. And especially this year, what we have observed, the UN Habitat community, which is primarily focusing on housing, but of course, with the upgrading of UN Habitat and Habitat 3 agenda, they are much more focused, the hub for subnational and urbanization in the UNFCCC space, in the UN space. And in Nairobi, there were numerous agendas. We have seen this, for example, there was first ever biodiversity resolution, first ever climate resolution. So these are not traditional topics that come to the priority of the urbanization ministers. So we can definitely feel that of the UN or urbanization habitat community is fully responding to achievements in the Rio Conventions and other spaces. This had been a result also of these efforts. There had been several negotiation document resolution, and there was a ministerial declaration. The resolution on climate change, which is urbanization and climate change resilience, is a merging of the two inputs. One drafted by Pakistan, and Pakistan was also very active at the UN climate conference in Sharm el-Sheikh, as well as Egypt as the COP27 presidency, but also the host of the World Urban Forum, upcoming World Urban Forum. So it was a very nice sequencing and convergence of the discussion we had in Sharm el-Sheikh, and especially to go forward. This resolution has a long, I think it's around 7 page. It has a number of preamble paragraphs and operative paragraphs. For those that is much more relevant for us is that, first of all, it recognizes very nicely the urbanization and climate change ministerial meeting. It was a decision of the UN Habitat Board, actually. It was in 2020 March, and it was, in fact, a point that LGMA has been championing for more than 10 years. It was in Warsaw in 2013 when we have first asked this kind of an engagement. So the board of UN Habitat was also influencing in this process, and ICLE, as the LGMA focal point, has attended the meetings of UN Habitat board virtually, and both in terms of encouraging them, but also acknowledging their leadership. The preamble paragraph takes note of the Surge initiative and its leadership of COP27 presidency, UN Habitat and ICLE with other partners, and it particularly mentions that it is a multi-level governance effort with a diversity of action agendas for cities. When you look at the body text of the text, it's consisting of 8 paragraphs. The ones that are much more relevant for our agenda at the moment is that, first of all, it encourages the executive director of UN Habitat to continue engaging in other ministerial meetings, such as at COP27. Obviously, the original paragraph here was a bit more stronger, but we all know there is a negotiation process, and of course, we are not in the negotiations. The national government was doing that, but still, this I think we can highly welcome this. This is a mandate to the UN Executive Director, UN Executive Director, and it is asking the executive director to continue to support surge initiative and explore options for its operationalization and in collection with the executive board. Again, it gives a mandate to the board, which is also good. National governments are also engaged with that, and then it can be much more effective, especially those who are in the surge process. You're aware we are envisaging national governments also being actively co-chairing the working groups, the processes. So it is not an only local government initiative or an LGMA initiative. It's a collaborative effort. In that sense, giving the mandate to executive board and giving the mandate to executive director to continue this process is extremely valuable. And finally, the last paragraph is extremely important. Obviously, urbanization ministers have not been involved directly in most countries in the climate action plans. And that was why we have invited them or encouraged them to come to COP27 and this ministerial meeting. But now, from this urbanization ministerial, the urban ministers are much more aware that they can play a role in the NDCs and they can raise their ambition. They can work with local and national governments on the national determined contributions, which is a new paragraph that is really opening a wide door open for us, and that is particularly helpful for our dialogue with COP28 presidency in that sense. I will not go into details of the biodiversity negotiations or resolution, but it's also very, very powerful. And of course, there are localization and other agendas. One thing we should be making maybe a bit interesting to note is that I was expecting in the ministerial declaration also to welcome this urbanization and climate ministerial. Unfortunately, did not fly there, but it is okay. I mean, we will still be happy with what we have and build on the achievements. Um, the LGMA at the UN Bonn Climate Conference, by the way, if we have colleagues from UN Habitat who were there, I don't see them now. It may be possible because after this long days, they may have taken some time. But during UN Habitat Assembly, there were several side events. There were consultations by the COP27, 8th presidency, and the surge. So it was an opportunity for us to get more engagement and involvement. While we were in Nairobi, the UN conference took place, and we had an important agenda for 10 days here in Bonn. Um, we had delivered our interventions in the opening and closing plenaries. We highlighted the connection to UN Habitat Assembly, the progress like the G7 subnational roundtable, the Denver City Summit, so that we informed delegations how are we advancing to COP27, and we welcome what has been achieved or not achieved at the end. Article 6.8, non-market approach, we are making good progress with local and sustainable urbanization. We are committed that there will be good results coming up. There was a youth stock take. It was interesting because LGMA was the only non-youth constituency. It was with all the levels of presidency and the champions, and particularly ICLE released also this checklist for youth engagement. And we particularly announced our effort that we are working with Jungo on the stock take, and which a couple of days later was confirmed that Jungo is now an endorsed partner of our stock take process. We can discuss it in the next agendas. Um, Obviously, there was a typo here. It's not a shark, it's sharp, but there are sharks in Egypt as well. This is the Sharm el Sheikh agenda, adaptation agenda was an effort, was a legacy, because you all remember, especially from Marrakesh Partnership and especially from pre-2020 ambition discussions, it was mainly focused mitigation. It was mainly to support emission reductions in the action agenda. And there was a huge demand that there should be a vision for adaptation. That is what Sharm el Sheikh and that is what COP27 presidency introduced with this very solid vision and very nice initiatives, including Surge and others as well. And in Bonn, 6 months later or 7 months later, there was the launch of the task forces, and one of them is dedicated for human settlements. ICLE has been one of the co-leads, including UN Habitat. We have encouraged other members also to join that. But I think it's now giving us the opportunity that mitigation, breakthrough agenda, and adaptation, Sharm el-Sheikh agenda is now in the equal footing of this process. There was a global stock take. We will touch upon it later on. As part of our engagement, we had the first in-person meeting of the LGMA Leaders Dialogue with the UNFCCC Friends of Multi-Level Action. This was really nice to see the diversity of parties and partners being involved in this room with 1.5 hours of discussions. I will give an information about the message from Ambassador Razan Mubarak in shortly. Obviously, there were side events. One of them was with the UN Habitat and UNFCCC Global Innovation Hub. We had participated in a number of consultations with COP28 presidency, and I think that is giving its results, because we are seeing how we can build up further the process. And daring cities played an important role with engagement at the city hall, at the GIZ, and the daring cities contribution, the daring city leaders at the LGMA dialogue, which proves that this mechanism is supporting the LGMA engagement as well. The stocktake process was the last technical dialogues. This was the last opportunity to provide inputs, updates on what has been achieved in this space, which is for us urbanization, multi-level action. There were numerous mechanisms, and we are very happy that LGMA were visible at every working group, at every roundtable, and every session. And I think the message was wide and clear. That was also even in the caricatures you can see there. And I think this will feed into the political space that we are coming up. And I think the particular emphasis was that this should continue now and in much more intense discussions. So this was the message from Razan Al Mubarak, a high-level climate action champion from Emirates. It is a long statement, therefore I'm just copying the most highlighted paragraphs. First of all, she speaks about COP28 outcomes, which means decisions, announcements, but it is much more integrated into the institutionalization of COP28, so that we are not just an action or just an initiative, but much more embedded in the process. Secondly, it calls for a multi-level coalition for tailor-made outcomes. It's really good to see that this multi-level action delivers vision that we have been developing is now resonating with the presidency, that they really want the multi-level concretely demonstrated by partners, by parties, and the local and LGMA members. So that is encouraging us that to be more ambitious on that. And they are also welcoming us to actively engage in the stocktake process, and that once again she is underlining that we are expecting that the important expectation is that from COP27 we will go to COP28 with much more institutional and official engagements into the process in the implementation of the UNFCCC. So let's spend some time on the stocktake, especially what we are doing collectively, not necessarily the UN technical processes, but our technical processes or our global and political processes. First of all, good news is that we are receiving the endorsement from, we started with Earth Day Network, but the Yungo constituency, one of the very active engagement groups in the UNFCCC process, is now officially endorsed the global stocktake. Particularly, they are convening local local conference of the youth at the local and regional level, and before COP28, we will make sure that our sessions and COIs will have a kind of a synergy, and we will try to provide inputs and outputs from each of those. That will make our vision much more solid, and it's exactly asking the right engagement, so that at the local level we're also engaged with the key partners. We have developed the poster in 3 languages that you can use download. So originally in Bonn it was only English, but especially for the MetCop in Tangier, Morocco, we prepared French and Arabic versions, and we are more than happy if others can contribute to make it in different other languages as well. Again, we are we've spent some time on how to conduct local stock takes, but let's also have a bird's eye view. We discussed this in the previous webinar, but it's always good to remember how much in numbers, in concrete, monitorable processes we have advanced. But knowing that in the NDCs, there's still a lot of room to improve, and none of them are institutionalized. And that's exactly what we are hoping. One example, we are saying that on the way to Glasgow, there were more than 60 countries who raised their ambition with local and regional engagement. Our goal that in the second phase of the second generation of NDC, which will come by COP30 in Brazil, we should count the countries who have not engaged local and regional. So this is the way we should say that this is the new normal. This is the way we should say that this is the mainstream, so that the number of countries brought who have brought local engineering into the NDCs in its design and implementation should be more than those who did not. That I think is the critical criteria that we have to look on the next couple of years, starting from COP28 onwards. And COP28 should start to bring this momentum with the parties committing to say that, yes, we will do it. And then we will have to work with them how to do it, because the real NDCs will not be in Dubai. It will be at home, but it will be brought to Dubai. Again, process-wise, you can see before Paris and after Paris, the number of initiatives, the scope of those initiatives, and its influence, impact have exceeded what has been in the past before Paris, which clearly shows that Paris introduced a new momentum, and from Glasgow onwards, we would like to make sure that the new generation of NDCs build on this achievement, because as of today, none of those NDCs are reflecting this as exactly as we would wish. So that is the moment to make sure in Dubai onwards, we make this from the parties aware, and they open the doors for us much more wide. And our stock takes, our logic was that, first of all, there is no requirement officially for national stock takes or local stock takes. It was a proposal that we as LGMA has pushed forward. They included in June, and officially they are welcoming all these inputs. But it was not given. It was something that we fought for, and it is an opportunity for us to bring our communities back to the process in the climate emergency, because we're aware the global geopolitics is also evolving. It's an opportunity to bring climate change back into the agenda of all communities. And it is an opportunity for us to show our power of multi-level action, turning city halls into mini COPs, making sure that such a discussion takes place every year, making sure that the outcome of the discussion feed into the UNFCCC, will give us, if we can establish such a sequence, it will give us a huge opportunity so that UN could also benefit, and UN can also say that this is the new generation of multi-level action. And how we would like to conduct this. We will make sure when these are discussed, they should focus first of all their homework. Are they delivering? Are they serious in their commitments? Are their communities aware? Are they engaging? What are the gaps? Obviously, we are all aware we are not reaching our goals yet, but how we can make sure um, implementation is accelerated. Second, what is the national relation? What is the NDCs of our country? How are we related? Are we aware? Are we involved? If we are involved, are we delivering it? What are the opportunities we can develop so that this relation to the national process? And third, climate justice. Are we really bringing all urban communities, all disadvantaged communities, all poor, rich, youth, young, old, because collective engagement is the key for climate emergency. If you leave those outside, they will not be participating, and you will definitely not reach your climate emergency response goals. We are very happy we have launched the first list of 10 stock take sessions. Some of them are international and some of them are local. And the local ones are also started, some of them, but the others are also on the way. I'm very happy testimonials from our leaders like Mayor Sepiani from Chefchaouen, Mayor Derner of Bonn, Susan Aitken from Council Leader of Glasgow City Council. These are all exemplary leaders who are recommending us that this process kicked off by LGMA is something that is valuable in their regions, in their cities, and they encourage others to join. And they will be providing inputs like Glasgow will talk about really how they are delivering justice, or Bonn is trying to make sure that there is this connection to NDCs and Talanos and other processes. And Mayor Sefian has once again mentioned that this is continuity of our achievement since COP27 and onwards, so that it is for us a responsibility to deliver it successfully. Last couple of moments, and I will now, after this, I will give a break so that we can receive input from our partners, and then I will invite Ingrid to share her update on the biodiversity agenda, so that at least we spend some time on the climate negotiation a bit more. I hope, Ingrid, this would be okay for you in terms of timing. Are you able to stay till the end of this webinar?
Yeah, fine.
Okay, great, good. Um, so this calendar is a revised calendar, which I'm not sure whether it's announced publicly, but it is very likely coming up soon, if not done yet. There was a deadline of 28th of May when presidency had announced this list, a different version of it, and they received feedbacks, and including us and all the stakeholders. If you remember, the original announcement was to have the cities, regions, and urbanization day at the second week, and we were a bit concerned on that. It was good that it was connected to finance, but it was again too late for us. Particularly if we have a planned climate action summit, which will also have a very prominent engagement of local and subnational leaders. That's our plan at the moment. There is a response to this call. The new calendar, if you look at the bird's eye view, the first week is the hardcore climate agendas. This is really the traditional, very sensitive, but also very difficult topics: loss and damage, energy, NDC, finance, and urbanization. I think engaging our agenda into this big agenda is has an advantage, and there's a value for that. The second week is, you can call it as like a soft agenda. It is an agenda where there is literally very hardly any dispute. In fact, I mean, everybody's agreeing on the need for engaging these new topics into the climate debate, because it's the climate emergency mode of action. And the good news is that we are also very actively involved as across constituency in the food, youth, and nature, so that what will happen is that we will continue our engagement the first week, but we will continue the second week with a different mode of engagement. So if we look at this full calendar, the first agenda, we will have our pavilion. We have applied for it. Multi-level action pavilion will continue. This year, there is some differences in the way constructed or logistically managed. We will accommodate these new realities. Um, but we are expecting our pavilion will be one of the biggest still, and it will be also very interactive with all the partners involved. And we will also be sharing this building with a number of partners. Like, this is the space where you could think about multi-level, urban, and all the actors will probably be around or close to this building that will be hosting our pavilion as well. Then we will use this for the whole inputs to the negotiations and action agenda. That will be our base, home base in the blue zone. We're expecting new outcomes for the Climate Action Summit. As announced in March, Bloomberg Philanthropies and Presidency are committed to make sure there will be a local action summit that engages all local and regional leaders. It will be the moment where there will be this high-level interaction, but also a good visibility. So the design is that it will be blue zone and green zone. And we will see, because it's always subject to final process. And we're waiting for the presidency to come up with some outcomes. And obviously, during the during the holiday period, probably they will be less active, but we can expect some more outcomes to come in the next couple of weeks. And then we will continue with our urbanization day. The good news is that there's an urbanization day. It is the moment where this ministerial meeting on urbanization and climate will kick off, but also there will be other opportunities, and it will be on the 6th of December. And then in between, the second week and in between, in the blue zone, we will also try to make use. There is an opinion opportunity for a gathering of bigger scale with a capacity of like 250 people or so. We will check whether we will be able to use this, like our LGMA forums in particular, to make the connections between the dots and make sure there is this continuity of those inputs and outputs. This is subject to final discussion. So yes, Eva, the urbanization, cities, regions, and urbanization is at the moment planned for 6th of December, the first week, the last day of the first week. So what will happen from now until COP28? This is what we should be expecting. That there will be number of agendas: loss and damage, adaptation, finance, submissions, workshops. Our working groups are engaging in that. One of the examples is Bangkok, and we already have an LGMA delegation there. Regional climate weeks. Good news. In the past, it was always in summer, and it was a bit messed because it was too short notice. Now it's in September. Applications are being received. And September, October, let's say. In the next couple of weeks, we will have G7 Urbanization Ministerial at the beginning of July in Japan. And there will also be in September G7 Roundtable on Subnational Climate Action with Urban 7. And Urban 20 Mayor Summit will be also coming. So these are opportunities for us to build on further, especially the ideas of this multi-level coalition for multi-level entities. That is the moment. These are the moments where we can cook all these discussions. Outside UNFCCC, there will be a high-level political forum in July in New York. It is focusing on SDG 11, and I think there is not a climate direct focused debate, but from the SDG 11 and Urban Local and Emerging Governments Forum, there will very likely be inputs to build upon UN Habitat Assembly outcomes and Ministerial Urban Meeting, Urban Climate Meeting. There will be in Rome Food System Summit, and UN Climate Action Summit will be in New York in September. Urban October will be an opportunity for us to elevate our voices. And throughout this period, we will have stock take for climate emergency. In particular, I am expecting that together with presidency and also as well Bloomberg Philanthropies, with the partnership they announced in March, they have received inputs. They are digesting all these feedbacks. There will be an announcement, hopefully, in the way to take the process forward, and we will see how we will be involved. I cannot speak officially now, but I'm very happy that LGMA is positioned as a key partner into the process that we will be bringing to the table. A part on and UNFCCC outcomes, a part on finance, and a part on action agenda is making the full picture of all these initiatives, processes that they speak to each other and that can come up with a more consolidated and systematic approach. I think that will be the biggest achievement once this agenda is announced, so that all not having from different angles are now converging and they are serving for the same purpose much more effectively. One final point from our side. In the next couple of weeks, there will be an election in the IPCC. The chairs, co-chairs, so many positions will be elected. It is mainly nominated by national governments, but it is mainly scientists who are involved in that. One relevant, important, we always had good relations with IPCC, but there's one person that is very unique to the LGMA, and that is Deborah Roberts. Deborah has been first ever a local government staff and an official who has been involved in the IPCC at so high level so far, and she has been instrumental in developing IPCC cities and climate action agenda, culture and climate communities, and especially also the upcoming preparation for the AR7, especially for the cities. Therefore, while we will express the best of luck to all the candidates, Deborah Roberts is a special person to the LGMA community. She is one of us. We, of course, wish her the best of luck in this tough competition. For that position, there are 4 candidates, And here you can find her YouTube message and also the information, along with others as well. And we'll stay tuned for the other updates. Let me give a break now. So if there is any immediate inputs to the topics we discussed, because we will also hear from our colleagues from Biodiversity Agenda, that's also evolving. The next COP is coming next year in Turkey. Um, so I see from Eva that she would be at July. Of course, there will be local and regional governments forum in July, hosted by Global Task Force and secretariat by ECLG. And there's a number of agendas. I fully agree there should be a climate discussion. I personally will not be there, but let's make sure that our colleagues are connected to each other. And in the LGMA or let's say in the local and regional governments forum, there will be also an intervention on behalf of the climate agendas and as well as other agendas. So since I don't see too much hands raised, let's give the floor to Ingrid now. Ingrid, I remember I had received the presentation, but do you want to use your screen?
Let me use my screen because I've
Yeah,
added a slide. But I
good.
need
So
to,
we can
you need to
merge it
just let
right
me
now.
do that because you're still sharing.
Yeah, I know. I let me give up my sharing and you turn it off.
Thank
Take it off.
you.
After Ingrid, we can still have Q&As and inputs. So Ingrid, the floor is yours.
Great. Can everybody see my screen? Okay. So yes, there's been a lot happening on this agenda. I'm just going to give a bit of update first. There was a very important meeting of mayors and also the Independent Advisory Committee on the Ramsar Wetland City Accreditation Scheme that was held on the 7th of June in Amiens in France. Essentially, what that meeting did was to open the call for applications for wetland cities to submit their applications for accreditation. There has been a diplomatic note issued. Anybody that's interested in this with a city that has wetlands, please get in touch with myself or Laura Lowe. We'll put our email addresses in the chat box. They also discussed the operational guidance and planning for the convention's standing committee, which is going to be held in September from the 8th of September. ICLEI has offered to continue as co-chair for the next triennium, and we are really hoping that that's going to be successful. So far, things are looking very good. We did have a presence. ICLEI was represented at the IAC meeting in Amiens in June. Um, and just to say that the other important initiative that's happening now is that the consultations for the fifth strategic plan for the Ramsar Convention for the period of 2023 till 2033, in other words, next decade, is going to be starting next month. The roundtable for mayors, this meeting was convened by the Ramsar Regional Center in East Asia, which is hosted by Korea, and then of course also hosted by the mayor of Amiens. That was on the 8th and 9th, and you can see there on the right hand all of the cities that were present there, the mayors and senior level officials. Again, ICLEI was present there. We did a presentation on cities with nature. They discussed the draft Wetland City Network Strategic Plan, and there was a discussion around the education of around wetlands within the formal education sector. There's a resolution in that connection. UN Habitat, the resolution that Eunice referred to a little earlier on biodiverse cities was adopted, and it specifically looks to the topic around mainstreaming biodiversity and ecosystem services in urban and territorial planning to enhance the biodiversity and resilience of cities. It was submitted by several countries, Costa Rica, Colombia, Ecuador, Germany, Pakistan, Peru, Singapore, and Uruguay. And we're very happy with this resolution because, in a sense, it refers to a whole lot of things that are related to habitats and sustainable development and all of that, but also specifically the Kunming Montreal Global Biodiversity Framework. And it makes reference to two important targets for cities. The one is Target 12, and Target 12, as you may know, talks about increasing the area and quality of green and blue spaces, also the issue of connectivity, and it talks about ecosystem services and the well-being of people linked to nature. And then target 19, which is an important target also because that is where parties to the CBD are committing themselves to substantially and progressively increase financial resources from all sources, public, private, etc., for biodiversity. And this obviously would have implications also for greater biodiversity and resilience in cities. And then there are several requests to the executive director. I'm not going to go into the details. Happy to share that the link to that resolution, but essentially it's about making, that the UN Habitat is encouraging a shift in urbanization that takes account of biodiversity and ecosystem services, and also to support their member states in achieving this. Then just a meeting that took place in Cambridge 2 weeks ago. This was convened by the CBD in collaboration with the IUCN's World Commission on Protected Areas, as well as UNEP's World Conservation Monitoring Center. And it was attended by representatives from various parties, from Indigenous people and local communities, and various NGOs and other observers. ICLEI was the only representative of the LGMA at this particular meeting. And the idea of this meeting was to look at and to consider the possibilities, the feasibilities of a partnership amongst whole of government and whole of society stakeholders around achieving and supporting the achievement of the 30 by 30 targets. It's essentially target 3, but also the linked targets, targets 2, 1, and there's several others. And basically what we did was to map and agree on how best the various stakeholders and parties could support themselves in reaching those targets. The really great thing that came out of it, one of the exercises involved identifying the priorities for such a partnership. Incidentally, there will be a formal notification coming out requesting people to join the partnership in due course. But what I was really excited about was that the role and contribution of our constituency specifically towards achieving Target 3 was recognized as one of the top 11 priorities for such a partnership, which is a great achievement because in previous years, when they had the partnership under the Aichi targets, there was absolutely no mention of local and subnational governments. And then just keeping with the CBD, there is an advisory committee which is established in terms of the decision that was adopted first in Nagoya in 2010 and then renewed last year at COP15, which sets up two advisory committees, one for cities and one for subnational governments. ICLEI Cities Biodiversity Center serves as the secretariat of the local government advisory committee, and we held a meeting towards the end of May where we basically tabled our summit report. We held a tour de table just to hear from all of the mayors that were represented there, what their plans are, what they're already doing, as we are in this decade of having to take action on the new biodiversity framework, its targets, and the plan of action. And we just talked to them about the mobilization towards COP16 as we prepare for our next set of meetings coming up. And we're also very happy to announce that we had top level representation from the CBD Secretariat there, the acting executive secretary. You can see in the bottom right-hand corner, David Cooper was there, as well as Neil Pratt, who is the manager responsible for cities and subnational governments. And then just to quickly end off, we have a webinar series. We have mentioned this in the past. Essentially, this is part of our mobilization towards moving our constituency from agreement to action. We had a very successful webinar on the 25th of May, represented by the executive secretaries, secretary generals of Ramsar, the CBD, the Convention on Migratory Species. We had a very senior person there from UNEP. We had some mayors, representatives of subnational governments, as well as national governments. It was a real multi-level discussion around how cities and provinces and states can contribute to the 30 by 30 target. Our next one is on this target 12, which is the so-called cities target around green and blue spaces. It's also the target that's specifically mentioned in the UN Habitat resolution. That's going to be taking place on the 20th of July. We've got a very exciting lineup of speakers, and we will shortly be sending out the notification of that. So really encouraging yourselves to join that as well. And then you can see the rest of the program that's outlined there. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Ingrid. Thanks for this update. And I think there are three things I think we should take into account. One, and the UN Habitat resolution, it was interesting to see the reference to 10-year plan of action, which was originally in the draft, but is dropped off at the final version. I think it would be good to understand what has happened there. You don't have to answer because I know you were not there as well, but we should check with our partners and colleagues what was the rationale behind that. Obviously, we cannot change, but it's good to know what has happened. Second, I think the now making, you have seen the agenda. Let's all remember, Ingrid has repeatedly mentioned the role of IUCN in this process, and IUCN president is Razan Al Mubarak, and then actually we had developed this discussion with her as well, that in the nature agenda that she would like to bring to the COP, we should make sure there is also a strong engagement of local governments, especially linking to this official process coming from biodiversity mechanisms. And maybe again along these lines, I think this is the moment where in the climate emergency, this synergies will be much more visible. And I think it will also be good to address this when we are in the global stocktakes at the local level. I see an input from our partners, Councillor Alison Gillard from Dublin, who has been the spokesperson of Committee of the Regions, rapporteur of Committee of the Regions towards COP27, and she represents us in the Copenhagen ministerial, and she will still be part of the Committee of the Regions delegations to COP28. She was asking, what are the concrete, let me just read so that I don't make any mistake. But Councillor Gilland, we can also open the space so that you can also intervene if you want. Could you speak a little more on the reception to inclusion of surge initiative in the UN Habitat Assembly documents, please? Let me come back to my presentation again while talking to this. So I think the good news is that the UN Habitat board and members have been fully aware of this initiative, and the fact that it was brought by the developing countries and then endorsed by all from the global north and global south is a very good news. I'm just going to the statement once again. And if we look at the operative paragraph, it says the UN Habitat Assembly, all nations request the ED to inform the board to subsequently develop options and recommendations for the surge unit as a meaningful instrumental institutional arrangement for the executive board. So they recognize surge as an institutional opportunity, and this means I think they will be taking it seriously and support engagement. But it depends on us, and I know there are not colleagues from the colleagues from UNEP that are not in this call. It would be an opportunity for us to listen from them because they were in the rooms while this resolution was negotiated. They can provide some feedbacks. Obviously, when it comes to such initiatives, immediately the question comes about the financing of this, resources. But I think, and then this creates a concern. Some of the global north countries, they are saying that, oh, we're already giving a lot of money. I think the issue should not be immediately finance, but also engagement in implementation. But if you have any additional points from your side, we will be more than happy to hear your perspectives as well.
Yeah, thanks very much, Yanis, and my apologies. I don't know how I'm on as a panelist, but it's great to be here this morning. Now, our Committee of the Regions delegation to COP is meeting with the EU Commission this afternoon, and we just heard that there was a little bit of pushback from more the European side around the inclusion of surge. And I just want to explore that with them this afternoon. But if you had any insight to that, you've mentioned finances, which may be the trigger for them, it would be just very valuable for us going into that meeting.
I think that that's very valuable. We can alert our colleagues after the call if possible. But I think the good thing would be, for the moment, the EU urban missions, urban transition missions is recognizing as a partner to the search. We have heard at the meeting, for example, German development agency GIZ has also announced as a new partner, which are good signals that from the European institutions are coming up. I think we should be able to address to the European colleagues, and especially this goes to the other global north, like US and Japan. There are so many things they are supporting and engaging. When it comes to UNFCCC, none of them are visible in any of the UN documents. I think if we can make search as the umbrella that shows all these national and supranational initiatives, um, covenant of mayors. You don't see it anywhere in the UNFCCC documents. There is literally no space for such initiatives to be visible in the UNFCCC. That's why we are positioning urbanization as a really a category in the processes so that they can comfortably talk about it. And if we can give this signal to the European Union and other national governments that this is not that is an additional thing, but it is really to bundle all that is going on at the national and regional level, so that UN can regularly take this opportunity to inform and then feed into the action, but also an opportunity for urban ministers also to connect themselves to the UN climate process. That could be my recommendation, but we should definitely continue to build on what additional topics we can develop.
Brilliant, thank you.
Excellent. Colleagues have shared the other webinars from biodiversity. That's also good. By the way, I forgot to mention during this period, one of the interesting things, which is the London Climate Week, is also taking place already this week, and there has been some announcements at the City of London, but also the other partners. There will be some side events hosted by partners, so this will also be an opportunity for us to hear some announcements and initiatives coming up and engaging London into the global process as well. So I am feeling that we are getting to the end of our discussions. If there are no additional points to be addressed by any other partners, I would recommend that we come to a conclusion, but particularly encourage all of us to come back to our own discussions about how do we engage in stocktake at our own territories and local and regional governments, and stay tuned, especially for the upcoming announcements after the Ramazan, Eid Mubarak, which is the next this week onwards. You may expect more updates, and this will also be the moment where there will be high-level political forum in New York. So the momentum goes further, and I think the good news is that our efforts are bearing their fruits. We are confident that COP28 will be the moment where literally the second generation of NDCs in climate action will be encompassing urbanization and multi-level fully on board. That's our ultimate goal. With that, I thank you all. Wish you the best of luck, and we'll continue with this in the afternoon for those who wish to join us. If not, let's stay in touch until next webinar next month. Take care.
Thank you very much. Bye.